Yo, what's up,
Pineapple.
guys? Stop it! Stop!
Pineapple. It's a
Stop it!
tasty treat for all.
Nigel, I will literally eat your whole entire uh life force.
Did you know that rotten pineapples smell like garbage juice? Now you do.
Nigel, you scare me. Anyways, guys, today me and Nigel are gonna be watching Top 15 Nightmare Fuels True Scary Stories. Since people like the scary stories on my channel, and I'm a cash grab. Anyways, I have some gum, and Nigel has Nigel, and we're just gonna watch these shows. I mean, these
What
stories.
type of what brand of gum do you have?
Extra. Oh wait. I gotta say the full name. Ringley's Extra Long Lasting Flavor Classic Bubblegum. 15 sticks, sugar-free gum.
Gum. Gum doesn't even have that much sugar to begin with.
Listen, I'm just trying to enjoy my day because I spent $3 for this fucking case.
15 pieces of gum? You
Yes.
know what I spent? I spent $5 on a pack of 35.
Well, I'm sorry, Nigel, but this sucks, Nigel. Anyways, let's press play because I need to hear his voice and
This video is a combination of stories from a video that Corpse Husband narrated for us a little while ago, but was taken down, as well as stories your maker and I recorded from Brosgram. Enjoy! I was about 3 years old at the time. My brother was 5. Our parents were going through a divorce, so my grandparents offered
let me
to
turn
look
on my
after
lights.
me and my brother
I'll be right back.
until the
It will
divorce
be
was
okay.
final, so that we weren't caught up in the mess. My grandparents' anniversary was coming up, so my grandmother thought it'd help our mother take her mind off things to spend some time with us so she could relax. She and my grandfather went out for the
No,
evening
you're not
and
going
left
back
me
to
and my
sleep.
brother home with our mother for the night. Things seemed to be going good at first, nothing out of the ordinary. It was starting to get a bit late, and my brother and I were sitting on the living room floor watching television. After a while, she asked if we had heard anything, and I remember we both looked at her and she had this worried look on her face. She muted the television for a moment to listen, and we started hearing noises coming from our basement. It was the sound of our bathroom door in our basement swinging open and closed again. It sounded like someone had just walked into the bathroom and slammed the door. But that couldn't be possible, seeing as how me, my older brother, and our mom were the only ones in the house at the time. Mom
Whoa,
used to say that
scary,
there was
guys.
reasoning that the house was just old, and old houses usually make strange noises. So we went back to watching television again for a while. After about an hour or so had passed, it was around 8 o'clock, almost time for my brother
Don't
and
say
I to go to
anything.
bed. Mom
Don't
turned
say
on
Sorry.
the
anything
television
vulgar,
again and told us to
Devin.
be quiet. We listened for a minute and didn't hear anything
Yeah,
at
we're totally
first.
Christian.
Then after a while, we
No,
began to hear the
thank you.
sound of
We're being
pounding
very
coming
Christian.
from the basement just under the living room floor. It was
You can
soft at
turn on the
first,
light
but
for
as it
frick's
went on, it
sakes.
got louder and
As
louder.
long as you
The
turn it back
sound
off.
circled the living room
I
almost
forgot
like
how
a
bad
shark
this hurt.
circling in on its prey. It got closer to where my brother and I were sitting as it circled around us, growing louder and louder, until it finally sounded like someone was banging on the living room floor under us with their fists, trying to break through the floorboards. Me and my brother jumped up onto the couch and huddled ourselves close around our mom, who was curled up on the couch and was just as scared as we were. The sounds of the pounding slowly subsided. Mom frantically dialed the restaurant where my grandfather said he and our grandmother would be. After a while,
I
my
made some
grandfather
noises,
picked
so
up and
now
asked
it's
what was
scary.
wrong. Mom told him what we were hearing. My grandfather is still a firm skeptic. He doesn't believe in ghosts. He told her it was probably just the pipes rattling, and that she was just under a lot of stress from the divorce and her imagination was running away from her. He then told her to be sure to have us in bed by 9 o'clock and he would see us in the morning, and he hung up. A few minutes went by and we were still huddled together on the couch. Mom did her best to stay calm and hold herself together for me and my brother, saying that Granddad was probably just right. It was an old house after all. So we just went back to watching television, trying to take our minds off of the situation before we had to go to bed. I'm not exactly sure what happened next, but a strong feeling of fear came over my mom as she turned off the television. I could see it in her eyes as my brother and I both looked back at her. We sat there in silence for only a moment. The air was dead quiet. Then the banging started up again, louder than ever. It sounded like someone was frantically trying to break through the floor in a fit of rage. Mom picked up the phone and dialed the restaurant again, but the phone wasn't working. She picked us up both from the floor and pushed us into the main hall and ran to the kitchen to get us our coats from the chair at the end of the table next to the basement door. Suddenly, me and my brother both heard what sounded like a set of heavy combat boots stomping up from the basement stairs and a hair-raising slam against the basement door. It sounded like whoever or whatever was down there wanted to get out. We then heard a tumbling noise as if someone had thrown a chair down the basement stairs. Mom didn't waste a second in getting us the hell out of the front door. She practically threw us outside and we spent the rest of the evening in her car until our grandparents returned home. Our grandmother's car finally pulled into the lot at the top of our street and my grandfather saw that we were sitting in our mom's car and he got angry. He demanded to know why we weren't in bed before they returned home. Mom told them everything. You could just tell by the way she spoke that she was shaken. My brother and I confirmed everything she said, but our grandfather had none of it. He went up to the locked room on the second floor and grabbed a pistol from the gun cabinet and demanded my mom follow him to the basement so that he could show her that there was absolutely no one else in the house. But she refused to follow him into the basement. Of course, after checking everything over, nothing was found to be broken, so there couldn't have been anyone else in the house. Our grandmother didn't need convincing. She had always believed in ghosts. She had stories of her own encounters with the paranormal, but either way, Mom never spent a
Looking to keep it fresh this summer? Maine has just the thing.
Shut up. Do not reveal my location, you stupid.
another night in her grandparents' house alone after that. To this day, she refuses to stay after dark. My brother is 30 now and I'm 28. Our grandmother has since passed away and our grandfather's health hasn't been what it should be, so I stay with him and I look after him. To this day, I don't know who or what was in her basement that night. I hope I never find out. But every time my grandfather asks me to go down in the basement to get something for him, I always get the feeling that there's someone watching me down there. And every time I go down there, the bathroom door on the far side of the basement is always open, no matter how many times I close it. Every time I go down there, that goddamn door is always open. A little update on this story. I've looked into the history of my grandfather's house where this event took place. As it turns out, several of the previous owners had died on the property. One person had a heart attack and died in his sleep in one of the bedrooms on the second floor. A second person had died of a blood clot in her brain in our living room. And the third, being the original owner of the house when it was first built in 1911, had fallen down the basement stairs and broke his neck against the wall of the foundation. Could this have been him in our basement?
Junior year of high school, my parents got a job offer out of state, and so I was forced to move all across the country. I started a new school late into the academic year, mid-March, and had a hard time fitting into the new school. All I wanted was to make a friend, but was too shy to talk to anyone.
Who needs friends?
It was around this time that my friends left MySpace to join Facebook, so I did the same to keep close to them. Some days later, I received a friend request from David. David was a guy that I had been friends with in my old town.
Nigel, you already know I'm your friend.
He wasn't exactly my friend, but rather the friend of another friend.
I know.
My friend
My best
Jerry had
friend.
introduced me
Friend.
to the group and would bring him along every time all of us hung out. We knew that David was a year older than us and that he had gone to a different school, but other than that, we didn't really know anything about him. In fact, we kind of always just referred to him as Jerry's friend because he never even bothered to talk to any of us. So when I received a friend request from him on Facebook, I was more than confused. He had hardly spoken to me when I had lived near him, so for him to want to be friends with me after all of this time just seemed a little strange. But I was so lonely and desperate for friends that I didn't care. Other than that, nothing really seemed off about him. At least not at the time. Looking back, I do remember that he had hardly any pictures or friends when I first accepted his request, but like I said, this was around the time that people had just started using Facebook, so it didn't seem all that weird for him to have such a barren profile.
These stories
Over the
put me to
years, his
sleep,
friend
man.
list
I'm
got a
telling you.
lot bigger, even more so than mine, so I really didn't think anything of it. But anyway,
Weird, Nigel.
I digress. I accepted his friend request, and it was just like this that David and I became friends.
A good
He
type
told me
of
that he
weird.
had just started university and that he was lonely because he was too shy to make
Thank you.
friends. I told him that I was having a hard time in my new school for the same reasons, and we bonded over that. Little by little, we started talking more. He shared his problems with me, and I shared mine with him. And when it was time for me to apply to university, he even helped me out. He taught me how to sign up for my SATs, ACTs, helped me apply to scholarships, and even paid for one of my application fees using a Visa gift card, so I didn't receive any of his personal information, and he didn't receive any of mine. Then, when I finally started university, he helped me with all that as well. He told me where to buy books, gave me studying tips, provided emotional support. So when he asked for my phone number, I didn't even hesitate to give it to him. David was my best friend, and I wanted to keep him close, even if we were physically away from each other. It was around this time that David started sharing more of his life with me, and all of it was pretty normal
Okay.
stuff. He had a job at Pizza Hut, which he hated but needed to keep in order to pay for bills. He also played soccer, but not for his university or anything. It was just a group of guys that got together on the weekends to unwind. I think the biggest thing he told me was that he had flunked out of university and that I was the only one that knew because he was too embarrassed to tell anyone else. And at one point, he also had to move back in with his mom, which he hated a lot. 2, maybe 3 years into our friendship, my family decides to take a trip back to the city where we had lived prior to moving all across the country, and I excitedly tell him and all of my old high school friends. Most of them were pretty excited about the idea of us all hanging out together again because after high school we had all just gone our different ways. But when I contacted
Oh
David
man, I
about
don't
it,
know
he
what the
showed
phone ad
little
is.
interest in hanging out with us. I thought it was weird. You know, I wasn't some stranger he had met online, but rather someone who had been in his life for many years. I kept insisting and asking for a reason, and then he finally gave me one. He told me that his pictures had been heavily edited and that he was afraid of disappointing me if we met in real life. I told him that it didn't matter what he looked like and that I just wanted to meet him, but he still didn't want to hang out. Instead, he just started being a huge dick to me. He knew exactly what buttons to push, knew all of my insecurities and secrets, and had started using all of that knowledge to hurt me. So I just stopped talking to him. Some weeks later, I meet my friends as planned, and much to my surprise, I see David there, looking just like he did on his pictures. I didn't understand why he had lied about photoshopping his pictures or why he had said he didn't want to meet me only for him to show up at our friend's house. But I was so angry at him that I didn't ask any questions. I just kept waiting for an apology, but David wouldn't approach me. He was treating me like he treated me back when we were in high school. I was really upset, but given that he had been such a huge dick to me, I just figured that this was just another attempt at getting under my skin. We were all drinking and talking about what we were up to, and when it was his time to share, he pretty much just said the same things I already knew about him. He said that he wished he was still in university like the rest of us, but that he had flunked out and he was just living with his mom. Said that he was miserable there and that he wanted to move out, but that his job at Pizza Hut wasn't paying him enough for him to move out on his own. At this point, though, I was already pretty pissed off, and the alcohol had given me enough courage to finally ask him why he had been ignoring me. He apologized, but admitted that he hardly remembered me, which hurt my feelings, but also pissed me off even more. I told him about Facebook and about our text messages, and he just kept insisting that he didn't use Facebook. Apparently, he had used MySpace at one point, but had stopped using that when he had switched over to Tumblr. A Facebook account was something that he hadn't even considered making. I asked him about the text messages, and he just said that I had probably confused him with another David because he had never even had my number. I thought that denying it was a lousy excuse, but Jerry backed him, which pisses me off even more. The thing, though, was that David hadn't just been talking to me on Facebook, but also to a bunch of us. So when we kept calling him out on his shit, he just told us to text this David guy to prove that it wasn't him. He set his phone on the table and I texted him, but no new messages appeared on his phone. Then, while we're all arguing how we need to give it some time, the David that I had been talking to for years responds, proving that we had been talking to a fake all along. Things turned pretty awkward at this point, with all of us feeling angry and betrayed, and David obviously feeling extremely violated. So with all of us wanting answers, we open up our friend's laptop and search for David's profile on Facebook. The first thing that David points out is that whoever this was, they were using his mother's maiden name and not his real last name. And that while most of the people on his friends list were people that he knew in real life, none of them were people that he had kept in contact with. His display picture was also of a dog, which he owned years ago, but had died since then, just like the fake David had told me. All measures that, looking back, I'm guessing were used by this person to keep David's close friends from actually finding him on Facebook. The older pictures on Facebook had been taken from his MySpace back when he had still been using that, but most of the newer ones had been taken from his Tumblr, which he apparently uploaded pretty often. The weirdest thing, though, was there was some pictures he swore he had never seen before. These were all pictures of his soccer games taken from the audience, which the fake David had said his brother had taken. The real David said his brother never went to his games, neither did any of his family members or friends. Further exploring his own fake profile, David pointed out that while a bunch of status updates were things that never happened, a lot of them were accurate. Whoever this person was, they had been watching David for a long time. They knew his schedule, knew what movies he went to, knew what kind of ice cream flavors he liked, knew his favorite bands, knew practically everything about him. We did confront fake David, but he never answered the text messages and instead deleted the profile before we had the chance to examine it further. So we never did get any answers. I don't know why that person pretended to be David for so long, or why he even did it in the first place. All I know is that I felt extremely violated for having shared so many private details of my life with him. And of course, I also felt a great deal of pity for the real David. I wondered for the longest time how this person found him and how they managed to learn so many private details of his life. Then, a few months back, my mother calls me saying that she found a profile with her name, but my picture's on it. My middle name is my mom's first name, something that very few people know. She thought that I had made a second profile and I didn't tell her the truth because I didn't want to scare her, but the truth was that I didn't even know that profile existed. I have always kept Facebook set to private and I no longer accept random friend requests, nor do I post my pictures anywhere else. So this profile only had really old pictures of me and nothing weird like David's soccer game pictures. But it was still active and had been active for a while.
This is a true story, folks. As much as I'd like to be a writer, I am not one. Spring 2014 is a slow season for my father's business. The weather is nice and the roads are clear, which means slow shifts at an auto shop. It was mid-April, around 4 p.m. The wind was pulling in a nice spring breeze when my dad, Bill, was walking along the side of his shop. It happened to overlook a small stream and a running trail, which he enjoyed gazing at near the end of his shift. The side of his building ran along the top of a steep hill which turned into the path. He heard a ruffling in the wind, and about halfway down the hill he sees a big blue tarp. Being very proud of his business and its appearance, he started to climb down the hill. He was just about to grab for it, about 15 feet away, to toss it in the dump when he saw a car pull into the lot. He turned around and went to help his customer. When 5:30 rolls around, he closes up and goes home, forgetting the tarp. The next afternoon, Bill is sitting in his office when 3 policemen came in. They asked my father and coworkers a bunch of questions about any suspicious behavior they might have seen. Side note, my dad is extremely charismatic and friendly. He oftentimes talks people into sharing information with him that they really shouldn't. He looks like someone you can trust, and you can, and he seems to always have the insider details about things like this. He used his humor to make people feel comfortable, which helps getting strangers to open up to him. Anyway, so Bill and his coworker Hank are talking with a female police officer when she lets it slip that a body has been discovered just down the hill. "Oh shit, I was just down there yesterday cleaning. I didn't see any body though," Bill said. "Around what time? Do you happen to see a large blue and white tarp while you were cleaning the area?" she asked intensely. Actually, yeah, I almost grabbed it yesterday, but I ended up getting distracted." She asks him more questions about what time, what he saw, etc. when he asked her if the body was found in the tarp. Yes, it was. A woman jogging found it this morning around 10:30 a.m. My dad was floored. He was just there yesterday. After a few more questions, the police all head to the crime scene to finish the initial investigation. No one was allowed on the scene, and the police were asking that passers-by not take any pictures. Luckily for you guys, my dad took one from his office window. This is what it looked like. You can see near the top of the picture the running trail. Just in front of that is part of the creek that is dried up. There are the officers and such searching for whatever they were searching for. You can also see just left of the officer in black a tiny shade of blue. That would be the tarp. Fast forward a few days. The police went back to my father's shop. They noticed the security cameras set up around the building, and they were hoping that they might catch someone on tape. While transferring the data over, my dad started asking more questions about the murder. He learned it was a middle-aged man that had been stabbed to death. Not too much to go on as it seemed. "Hey, you know there are a couple of meth heads that live in this shack behind our shop. It's connected to that bar." Bill started talking about his own predictions for the who-did-it scenarios. He continued, "Yeah, we have a lot of problems with them, stealing scrap metal from the back, letting their dogs run wild. Even had him threaten to shoot me once when I was spraying their dogs with water to quit the barking. You should check them out." The officer nodded, gathering the rest of his things and left.
I bet the father
"Hey
was
Hank,
the killer.
let's go down there, see if we can find anything cool," my father whispered to his coworker. "Alright, I guess it wouldn't do any harm," Hank replied hesitantly. They started down the hill where the trench was found. The grass was flat and the tarp was now gone. They walked around for 15 or so minutes when Bill headed up.
They're going with the female option to play waifu simulator. Shift is both a sprint and a dodge. You climb walls
It's
in
Genshin
this game.
Impact.
You've got stamina though, so you can double.
Excuse me,
up
that's
the
Tower
stream a
of
little
Fantasy.
ways. The trail runs under a main road
Sorry, I don't have
and
my
then leads
glasses
to a
on.
man-made lake. Just under the bridge, the water starts to get heavier and the trees are a bit thicker. He noticed a red Lowe's cart in one of the trees. "I'm taking that for the shop," he thought as he ran over to pull it out of the stream. Calling over Hank for help, the two of them pull it out and start wheeling it back up the hill. Suddenly, my dad stops. He sees something on the cart. What is that rusty looking stuff? "Hank, stop. Look at the fucking cart. Is that blood?" They looked closer and sure enough,
Language!
it was all over the cart. On the handle, on the wheels, and the side. But it wasn't only blood they started to notice. Hair. Human hair. Utterly stunned, my dad calls the policewoman he had been talking to the previous days and explained what they found. For whatever reason, the PD were very skeptical that this was evidence. At first, they didn't even believe my father. When he told them, it made no sense to make up. They sent out a car. There were 2 police officers and a CSI. The CSI asked my dad why he thought this was blood. "It looks like blood, sir." "I'm not sure. How do you know that this is human hair?" the CIA asked. "Because it looks like human hair," my dad snapped sarcastically. Why did he seem so hesitant? They used a chemical test and sure enough, it tested positive for human blood. They took the card as evidence and thanked my dad. Again, my dad tried to give his opinion on who the mystery killer might be. He suggested again that they talk with the crazy neighbors behind his auto shop. Still no information was taken down and they left with what they had. 2 more days pass. My dad is leaving the shop to get some things from Costco. There is a small dirt alley that leads to the main road, just behind his work. In the past, it had been blocked by one of the meth addicts' cars. They were complaining to my dad and his boss about the business driving cars back and forth through the alley, disrupting them. He notices it's open and decides to take the shortcut to his destination. But something was off. He saw the usual blocked car sitting in front of the shack. The door was wide open and there was someone sitting on their knees with their upper body inside the car. He got in his car and crept up, just a little, so he could see what was happening. He right away recognized the skinny red-headed woman as the female that lived in the shack. It was the shack guy's wife or girlfriend. He didn't know exactly. She was on her hands and knees surrounded with hard chemicals, bleach, Comet, OxyClean, and much more. My dad had said that he knew right then that they were guilty. For one, why would someone be scrubbing their car with straight chemicals? No water, no rinsing. It was the middle of the day on a hot June afternoon. Second, they happened to be only 2 blocks away from a local car wash. He said it felt off and he knew to trust his instincts. She just kept scrubbing and scrubbing the passenger side floor. He pulled out his phone and started recording her. Now, he's known this woman and her significant other for a few years now. Like I said, they complained about my father's workers and he complained about their dogs on and off for a while. It was all harmless bickering. My dad, always trying to be the funny guy, yells out his window as he's driving past. Covering up a murder, he laughed and drove away, hearing her say "fuck you" as he drove off. This time, when he called the police, they took it very seriously. He explained that she was cleaning the car aggressively and that it seemed like she was trying to bleach something out of her car. The next day, the PD went by to talk with the residents of the shack. The day after that, they made an arrest. After searching the shack, they found a large blood stain soaked into the plywood floor. Once the blood was seen, the wife or girlfriend crumbled and told the police everything. It was her husband or boyfriend, and the victim. The victim was named Rich. He had gone over to their little house to shoot up and get high. Someone ended up accusing Rich of putting some of the dope aside from himself, and things got heated. Eventually, the husband started to physically fight with Rich when he stabbed him. He bled out on the floor and died. They did not know what to do, so they stole the Lowe's cart to move him around, loaded him into the car, wrapped him in the tarp, and pushed his body down the hill. They ditched the cart, thinking the river would wash it down far enough that it wouldn't be found. My dad and Hank sit in their car while they watch the police arrest Don, the suspected murderer. He took a video of that as well. You can hear my dad very inappropriately yelling out his window, "Haha, killer," in the video. Both videos were lost when he switched phones. But here's a link to the site that reported on the events. My dad says that he's gonna start a PI business. Yeah, right. Because he solved a murder all on his own.
This happened about 5 years ago after my fiance and I had been living in our house for a little over
It
a
could have
year.
been the dad still.
I'm 6 foot tall and about 225 pounds.
What?
I've
It
always
could have
been
been the
naturally
dad.
Why would-
muscular and am told
Where's
I
his
have an
alibi?
What do
He
you
was still
mean?
the night of the murder.
My fiance is 5'2", weighs
I don't
maybe
like
30
your
pounds.
accusations like that. He obviously wasn't the killer.
Our house
They
is like a
confessed
basement.
to it.
How do we
You
know
walk in the
that,
front
Nigel?
door and there are 2 half stairs
How do
Because they
leading up to the
confessed to
living
it.
room and down to the
But
basement.
There's
The only
been
access to our
many
backyard is through the
false
sliding glass door in the upstairs living room and downstairs from
confessions.
our deck, which is
He might have
important
done
for
it.
this story.
You
During this
are
time, I partied a
paranoid.
lot,
You know that?
way more than I should have. I was between jobs, and it was toward the end of the holidays. And my interest in finding a
Okay,
new
I
job
had to
wasn't
stretch.
quite
Stop
what it should have been.
stretching.
Many of these nights I was out partying, I would end up just crashing
That's gonna
with
be me and
friends,
you
which meant
someday.
my
I'm gonna
fiancé spent many
I'm gonna
nights
be the
alone
person
with our
outside
3
and you're gonna
dogs.
be the one
I had a
opening the
serious problem with
blinds.
substance abuse, primarily alcohol, and I'm sad to say I was letting it get the better of me.
Man,
Fast forward a
knock
couple
at the
months, and I
door.
just found a new job that had random drug and alcohol tests.
No, I'll
A
just scare
godsend
you
in
up. I'll
hindsight.
get my makeup
I had
looking
been
all
sober
bloody
all
and
of 2
shit.
days and had begun repairing my relationship with my fiance when she told me how
I
glad she
would-
was I was sleeping at home again. I thought nothing of it and kissed her on
Yeah, I
the head
look
and
like
told her
a
I was
dead-
too
dead
and that I loved
person.
her. Later that night, my fiance and I were watching TV downstairs when I thought I heard something moving in our backyard. The dogs heard it too, but I dismissed it because they just perked up their ears, but didn't seem too alarmed. A moment later, I heard the noise again, and my fiance very quickly mutes the TV and gives me a very nervous look. "Did you hear that?" she asked, looking very uncomfortable.
Nah,
I told her
bitch.
that it's probably just a few of the neighborhood cats playing in our bushes, as there are quite a few outdoor cats living in the area, but she shook her head and began insisting that this wasn't the case. Before I could even ask her what made her so sure, I hear our sliding glass door upstairs fly open. All three of my Great Danes and myself are on our feet in an instant. The dogs let out the most ferocious sounding barks I've ever heard and tore ass up the stairs with me right behind them.
Roof.
As I'm rounding the first set of stairs and the dogs are reaching the top of the second set, I see the sliding glass door slam closed and the silhouette of a man running away. I get to the door and fling it open, and the dogs shove me out of the way to chase after this would-be intruder. I grab my flashlight, one of those big 4D cell mag lights that cops carry, and run out into the yard. I had just made it down the deck stairs when I see the dogs freaking out at the back fence. I sprint over and jump the fence just in time to see the man reaching the opposite fence and trying to get over it. He was covered head to toe in black clothing, a thick black hoodie with the hood pulled tight to conceal his face, and jet black cargo pants. Without any regard for my personal safety, I charge the man and just barely miss getting a hold of him as he makes it over the fence. Once more, I follow him over and come around the front of my neighbor's house just in time to see him hop into an old, beaten-up pickup and speed off. I watch for a moment as he speeds out of the neighborhood and disappears into the night. I run back home as fast as I can and check on my fiancée to make sure she's okay. When I walked into the house, she was sitting in the upstairs living room surrounded by all three of our Great Danes and clutching the biggest knife we own. She was visibly shaken, but ultimately she is a very strong woman and told me that she was ready in case I got into trouble. After calling the cops, giving statements, and triple checking to make sure every door and window in the house was locked up tight, we decided to watch another movie as neither of us were tired after the adrenaline rush we had just been through. During the movie, I asked her what made her so sure that it wasn't just cats playing in the yard. What she told me was enough for me to decide it was time to change my whole life. She said that for about a month now, she has been hearing strange noises coming from all around the house late at night. She would hear footsteps outside and occasionally what sounded like whispering. When I asked her why she never told anyone, she just shook her head and said she didn't know. After hearing this, I came to the realization that whoever this man was, he knew that I was never home at night and that my fiancée essentially was all alone most of the time. Fortunately for us, he somehow missed the fact that we have 3 Great Danes, and for whatever reason on this night he decided not to check and make sure she was alone again.
My grandfather and I were at his trailer up north, at this little nice trailer park. The kind where everybody knows everybody. I had this nice group of friends, whom I would hang out with every day and night. We would go to the swimming pool during the really hot days, and sometimes work out at the indoor fitness area. And once in a while, we would play little dumb games on the little playground. We were the only teenagers there, so we essentially had the entire park for our enjoyment. When night fell, we would always play manhunt. In case you don't know how this game works, the object is for one person to find everyone else and tag them. Once you were tagged, you had to join the hunter and find the others, eventually finding everyone else and resetting the game with a new hunter. The game was only fun at night, since it added a little frightening aspect to the game and made it much harder to find the prey. And of course,
When I was a
it would
kid,
give
I
us
played
guys time to
Manhunt
mac
with
on
my
the girls in
friends.
private.
Oh my god.
One night,
Ooh,
we
it was
decided to change
scary.
the game rules a bit.
Like,
Once you were tagged,
wait, pause
you
it,
would have to
pause
go
it.
sit on the playground and
I got a story. So back when I was in grade 4, we played hide and seek in the dark in the school, right? So we turned off all the lights in the school, and we had to go hide. And one person, I kid you not, right? I'm hiding under a table, and then one of the girls decided to start singing "Ring Around the Rosie" while walking down the hallway. And they purposely put their hair over their face. Let me remind you, I'm like 7 to 8.
Basically, you're just hiding and you just hear ring around the roses, a pocket
Yeah, I actually pissed myself
Seas
a little when I actually did. I peed myself and like, what? It scared
ashes
me.
we all fall down.
They caught me and I screamed like a little girl.
I know how to laugh without smiling
That's terrifying.
and laugh without opening my mouth. Why did I just hear a goat?
Uh,
Oh yeah, I'm in Minecraft. Bro, I
oh,
just heard a goat.
alrighty. Wait, you were playing Minecraft?
I was playing Minecraft like a few hours ago and I just hear meh.
Oh.
Sit on the highest point and wait for the game to finish. There were 10 of us when we started. Myself, my buddies Jeff, Robbie,
Jeff!
Bam, and Dom, and then 5 other girls whose names I really can't remember, but the only one important in this story is Julie. After drawing straws, it was decided that Robbie was going to be the hunter. The rest of us booked it away from him ASAP, so that he couldn't predict where we were. One of the girls, Julie, accompanied me in heading towards the wharf to hide amongst the boats. We started the game at around 8 p.m., so it was fairly dark out at the time. Not pitch black, but enough so that you could barely see ahead of you. The fog from the lake helped keep us out of sight. I decided to hide up behind my grandfather's boat, since we couldn't get in trouble if we were found by any of the park's groundkeepers. In the meantime, I decided to try to make my move on Julie. After some rather lewd actions, I heard somebody walking on the boards of the wharf. I covered Julie and myself with my black sweater and tried to hide us. All of a sudden, the noise stopped. I peeked out of the hoodie to see what was there, but there was nothing but blackness. I poked my head up to see if there was anyone around, but all there was to see was the beginning of the dock and 2 boats. It definitely sounded as if it was coming from right in front of us. So now Julie and I are really spooked, so we snuck out of the dock and headed towards the pool. We hid under one of the big lounge chairs and kept a lookout. Suddenly, something grabbed both my ankles and also Julie's. We screamed like banshees and turned to see Robbie, who was laughing his ass off at our fear. "Man, you guys are such pussies," he cackles. I take a big sigh of relief, knowing that it wasn't a wolf, or worse, a groundskeeper. Julie and I then head to the playground to wait for the game to end. We're just chilling and looking around at the stars, typical boring shit, when all of a sudden we hear a howl from the distance. Not close, but like across the park distance. Maybe Robbie found another person, I said in an attempt to crack a joke and distract Julie. She giggles and tells me she wants to sleep for a while and to wake her up when the game is over. Despite the fact that I wanted to get into her pants again while we were still alone, I obliged and gave her my hoodie to use as a pillow while I kept a watch out for the others.
Boys, all they
After
want
some
is
time
one thing.
passes, I see a figure out in the distance. I can't see much because of the darkness, but I can make out a larger figure that looks to be male. I assume it's Jeff or Bam, because who the fuck else would be out here at this time of night?
Language.
So I yell, "Did the wolves get ya?" The guy gets close enough for me to see and make out that it's Bam, shuffling towards us. "That tired, huh? Maybe you should have picked a better spot," I yelled to him. "That fucker Robbie sure knows how to run, I'll tell you what," Bam says as he climbs the playground to our spot. "Sleeping Beauty here already done?" Bam exclaims as he takes a seat across from me. Yeah,
there's a
couldn't
lot
handle
of
all this,
lot
man,"
of swearing.
I say, letting out a few chuckles. I asked him if he had heard the wolf howl, and he tells me he heard it close to where he was hiding and decided to book it away from there, just in case it decided to hunt him instead. We laugh and look around the area surrounding the playground, keeping an eye out for the other people, when we hear yet another howl in the distance. Only this time, it's accompanied by 2 other howls. "Maybe we should just chill here. Those mutts couldn't climb all the way up here anyway, Bam declares while pulling a flask out of his jacket. A deep voice bellows from the darkness. Want to pass that this way, cowboy? We were just about to shit our pants as we look down to see Jeff staring up at us from the bottom of the playset. After Jeff climbs up, we pass around the flask of what I think was some cheap whiskey. Bam nearly chokes on it when he suddenly starts yelling, "What the fuck is that?" pointing behind me and Jeff. I turn around to see 3 big-ass coyotes standing on their hind legs, at least 8 foot tall, with big arms and a narrow, bony body, at least 50 meters away from us.
Roar!
They had their arms
I'm
at
a
their
coyote.
sides, almost looking like fucking werewolves or some shit, as they slowly walk
Freaking! You
towards
don't
us.
swear!
We all go into fight or flight mode, panicking and trying to figure out what to do with these things.
Maybe you wouldn't
The
die
creatures start
if you
picking up
didn't
their
swear
pace
so
and
much.
start making audible growling noises as they approach the playground. This was still during the time where
Growl
cell phones
back
were
at
just
them.
becoming popular, yet none of us had one on us because we didn't allow phones during the game. It was obvious that if they tried to climb up the set, they could, because if they could walk on 2 legs, they could sure as hell reach us. They reach about the 30-meter mark, when all of a sudden there's a howl in the distance, which for some reason stops the creatures from getting closer. They start looking at us, and then the direction of the noise, and decided to get on 4 legs and bolt in that direction at breakneck speeds, like from 0 to 200 kilometers in a second.
I just
wake up
imagine
Julie
like
and
these
decide that we were just gonna get the
these
fuck out of there in case those Satan
3
spawns come back.
cowboy
We get to the
werewolf
wharf
looking
and get into my
guys
grandfather's boat
just walking
and put the
towards
tarp
them,
over
like
us to hide
stumbling
until
towards
dawn
them,
so
like
we can see
sort of
where
like
we were
zombies.
going.
But you know,
Yeah,
they're trying
this
to
might
walk
seem
on
like a
their
bad
hind legs.
idea because there's no
And,
real protection if those things
you
find
know,
us. But we could at least
then
try
all of a sudden
swimming
they
if
hear
shit
that
gets
and they're
heavy.
just
Cool.
Bam starts going nuts and says, "Okay, what the fuck just happened? What are we
language.
gonna do, Red?" Of course, I have no idea what to do. But because I have to try and keep the group somewhat calm, I make up some bullshit lie like I can drive the boat out in the lake if those things come back. Unfortunately, I actually didn't have the keys, so escape was a no-go. So here's the situation. We have 4 scared as fuck teenagers. It's around midnight, so 0 visibility. No cell phones. 3 beasts of unholy nature that will most likely maul us if we run into them. 6 other teenagers that are either dead, or at the very least in danger. And we have no way to know if they are attacked, because I made the mistake of trapping us in a fucking boat. With the situation being as fucked as it is, I tell the others that the only way to survive is to stay quiet and wait on the boat until dawn, so we can at the very least see where we are going. They all agree out of sheer desperation. In the meantime, I search the boat to see if we can find something to defend ourselves with. That's when I find the emergency flare gun set under the captain's seat. "What are you gonna do with that?" Julie asks. I tell them that flares scare off most, if not all, predatory animals, and that it might be our only way left of fending the things off if they come back. All in all, there are 5 flare shots and 2 flare sticks in the kit. After what seemed like an eternity, I noticed that the tarp was starting to light up. I look over at the others and see Jeff look at me with this smile like a kid in a candy shop. I pop one of the tarp buttons and see the sun rising over the lake. Seeing as how I had our only protection, I left the boat to scout the area around the dock. I exit the boat and look around and didn't notice anything in the surrounding area, just the normal camp area. I beckoned the others out of the boat, and we start making our way back to the play area to see if anyone else is around. What we saw at the playground looked like something out of a tornado damage video. The whole park was scratched to shit, and some of the poles were torn up and
Language.
bent. I feared the worst as I looked to see if anyone was there. I see Robbie and all the other girls bawling their fucking eyes out and shaking as if they were freezing. We asked them what had happened, and they told us that at some point, Robbie had managed to find the whole group of girls smoking weed behind one of the trailers. He howled after finding them and tagging them, which then seemed to be what called the beast away from us originally. They then explained how they had to run for their lives to the playground because the beast ended up running after them on their hind legs like Olympic runners.
what you do. I always thought that having 4 legs was better than 2, but I guess
When they reached the
that
playset,
works too.
they managed to just hide there without making a sound while the beast tore up the entire exterior of the playset. Somehow, without actually hurting any of the girls or Robbie. We all decided to tell the park owner of what happened and show him the playset. Because he thinks we are all just a bunch of hooligans, he ends up banning all of us from the park and chalked up the playset damage as us being reckless and stupid. He didn't charge us for the damages though. We all met one last time before leaving, and we all decided to not tell a soul of what happened because nobody would believe us. Yet here I am, telling you all what happened on that night. Can any of you try to explain to me what the hell those things are?
So I'll start off by saying this story is pretty long and is going to make my friend and I sound like complete fucking idiots. This is because we are. We completely
It's
ignore
this one.
everything we've ever been told about stranger danger and basic safety because hey, we are both 20-year-old college dudes. I'm also not the best writer, so bear with me. This happened last Sunday. My parents are pretty well off and love to travel to exotic destinations. They planned a trip to St. Lucia and extended an invitation to my sister, her boyfriend, and my friend Vince and I. St. Lucia is a small mountainous jungle island near the coast of Venezuela. It's a significantly underdeveloped nation with an all-cash economy where few taxes are collected and spent for the good of the commons. Violent crime on the island is not unheard of. There are a few paved roads, a few major towns, and a couple of small, secluded, high-end, boat-accessible resorts. We stayed at one of those resorts. My parents were in one room, and the rest of us stayed in a room next door. The rooms were more like little huts open entirely to the outdoors with easily accessible rooftops above and below. All was well for most of the trip. We went hiking, snorkeling, and relaxed on the beach. As much as my friend and I enjoyed it, this resort was meant for honeymooners, not for college kids looking to have a wild time. One night, Vince and I were up drinking late at the bar, which was not extremely lively as usual, and we get talking with the bartender, Gustavo. We bond with Gustavo over our interests in Yeezy, Wheezy, and girls, and nothing seemed off at all. We asked him if he knew any good clubs or where to go to have a good time in town. He told us about how we had to leave the resort to really experience St. Lucia as we expected. He offered to take us to his place sometime to show us a good time we'd be looking for. He then showed us a picture of his house. This should have been the first red flag, but we were drinking and had no reason not to trust our new friend. Gustavo had a massive house for a St. Lucian, complete with a huge flat-screen TV, pool table, bar, and a Camaro. We had been around the island a bit at this point and had not seen a house or a car half as nice as his. We told him we'd be interested, but would have to let him know when we could go later. The next day we get a text from Gustavo midday saying that a boat was at the dock to pick us up. This was strange to Vince and I since we hadn't agreed upon a time. We told him we had plans and couldn't go during the day anyway. This seemed to piss him off a little bit. The next day, whenever Vince and I would see Gustavo at the resort, he lacked enthusiasm and ignored us when we said hello to him. The following day, however, Gustavo was off work and texting us like we were best friends again. He asked us if we could come to his place and told us he was making pizza and had girls lined up and some of that good. Knowing that my parents would never let us do something so risky, we told him that we could only go after 10 o'clock because my parents were most likely to be asleep at that point. He agreed, but was kind of annoyed and made it sound like we owed him and better not bail again. On a side note, I've never done coke, but my friend Vincent has. I was slightly worried, but figured I'd just say no like Dare taught me to or whatever, and still have a good time. Besides, we couldn't bail twice. As 10 o'clock rolled around, my parents had gone to sleep, my sister and her boyfriend had gone elsewhere, and Vincent and I finished up pre-gaming at the beach bar near the dock until it closed for the night. It started getting very dark, and as soon as Vincent and I were about to be the only ones down at the dimly lit beach area, this is when things really started to get sketchy. Around 10:45, we get a call from Gustavo saying something along the lines of, "The plans have changed, the boat taxi is no longer being arranged through the resort. My guy is coming to pick you up. The fare is going to be more expensive now, around $100 US plus tip. He's nice, but he has a temper, and he's in a hurry, so don't piss him off. Look for the green and yellow boat and just get in." The unfamiliar flat and low tone of the voice he used sent chills down our spine, and suddenly we knew we were in serious trouble. We only had $140 on us together, and immediately agreed that we would wait for the boat, give him the cash, and say we couldn't go anymore. A few minutes later, we get another call saying, "My guy is going to be a little late. He has some drop-offs to make, but if you're not at the dock when he gets there, he will be knocking on room 17. Don't make him knock." Room 17 is the room my parents are staying in. Vincent is about to throw up at this point, trying to stay calm. I suggest we hide our phones and wallets nearby just in case they try to mug us. There is nobody but us at the beach at this point. I could barely make out some small boats far out on the bay. In the bay, but they hadn't moved in a while. We are standing on a small rock peninsula at the side of a cliff surrounded by black water with a single dim lamp overhead. We cannot run and we cannot hide. My parents and my sister and her boyfriend may be in serious danger if we do. 11:30 p.m. We get another call from Gustavo. "There will be 3 boats coming. Just get in." This is now obviously fucked. We are fucked. We are so fucked. Why the fuck are there 3 boats? Vincent and I are both pretty skinny guys. There's no way we could fight more than one person. It's the perfect kidnapping, I thought to myself. Vince and I are weak young adults who come from apparent well-off families who didn't tell anyone where we were going or what they were doing. Gustavo knew all these things and obviously had the resources and connections to pull abductions off, or worse. I spot what appears to be a security guard making rounds down the beach a ways and immediately walk as fast as I can to him with Vincent. I explain without using Gustavo's name that we are supposed to be picked up by 3 boats and that we feel extremely uncomfortable after recent events and just want to pay the boat captain and leave. My hope was that if we didn't get kidnapped, or at least one person would know where the fuck we went or what happened to us. My hope was that if we did get kidnapped, at least one person would know where the fuck we went or what happened to us. He assured us that no boats come around this time and that we shouldn't wait too much longer. We walk not 100 feet before we get the single most chilling text I've ever read. "Did you just talk to security?" Vince and I both froze and stared at each other for a few seconds. We decided to reply and say we were just chatting with him and heading back, and that we couldn't go anymore because it's too late. He quickly replied, "Don't worry, haha." We replied, "Seriously, don't send the boats, we're not going anymore." Once again, his response was, "Don't worry, haha," followed by yet another, "Don't worry, haha," and that was the last time we heard from him. I've seen the movies. Coke dealers don't usually treat rats very nicely. Maybe Gustavo knew that I didn't use his name, and maybe that's why we were able to get out of this mess. Was the security guard in on it, or were we being watched the whole time? I will never know. Not knowing what to do, Vincent and I started climbing the few hundred stairs up the mountain back to our room with purpose. It was dark now, with the only occasional dim lamp along the way. Every single sound, every single movement surrounding the jungle scared the living shit out of us. I've never felt this afraid in my entire life. We get back to the room, lock the door, and I go out on the patio to silently watch the easily climbable roof like a fucking hawk. Vincent swears that he has hands down on the edge of the roof, but they were gone. Vincent swears that he saw hands on the edge of the roof, but they were gone when I pointed my phone's flashlight at them. For the next 2 hours I sat there, head on a swivel, ready to fucking scream to wake my family up and fight for my life. Well, freaking the fuck out, I saw a meteor burn up in the clear night sky, which was easily the highlight of my night. So that was pretty cool, I guess. Eventually we figured it was over and went to bed. Relieved to wake up in the morning without my throat slit, I relaxed for a bit. Luckily, we were checking out of the hotel at 11, so we wouldn't have to run into Gustavo again. Before leaving the resort, Vincent and I wandered down to the beach to kill some time. That's when 2 large native men that did not appear to work at the resort approached us. The larger one said, "Hey, are you the guys that we were supposed to pick up on the boat last night? You know, Gustavo?" I replied no, trying my best to sound confused. "How much longer are you guys staying?" he asked. "We're leaving in an hour," I replied. He looked at me with a "I know you're lying to me" face, held out his fist, grinned, and said with a low voice, "Safe trip home." I bumped his fist and walked away trying to stay cool. It felt like everyone who worked at the resort was looking at us and whispering about us for the next hour. I just wanted to get the fuck out. I didn't feel safe until we made the hour drive to the airport and got through security. Gustavo and your friends, let's not meet again.
Many spooky encounters have happened to me in my
Alright, guys,
Spooky.
so we're gonna stop that there since we just watched 5. And, you know. Alright, guys, have a lovely day. I'll see you in the next episode. Yeah.
And remember, Chester loves you.